Welcome back, folks. My name is LastKnownMeal, and today we're going to be talking about The Witcher Blood Origin, which is a 4-part mini-series spin-off which is tackling the events of the Conjunctional Spheres, one of the most important events in the Witcher universe, which basically set the foundation of what the Witchers are, because without the Conjunctional Spheres, there would be no Witchers. And in layman's terms, a Conjunctional Sphere is basically the shuffling of worlds, universes, and planets, where you have a bunch of, let's say, monsters and people or whatever races from various types of universe being mished and mashed into various different worlds. So that's why in the world that we are playing in, for example in video game, or the world that follows in the books written by Andrzej Sapkowski, in this world you had the first appearance of various types of monsters and humans at the same time. The world before that was inhabited by elves and dwarves. So when you have one of the most important events being told in a spin-off series, you want this to be good, because this is going to set the precedent of what was happening in The Witcher. But of course that is impossible to happen with Netflix, because Netflix is known pretty much of taking IPs, stripping those IPs of anything which the lore talks about it or have any confines within the lore, and then they create their own fantasy shows with the logo slapped on top, because that is the only way someone is going to watch whatever they churn off out of there. Because keep in mind, this series, this entire Blood Origin mini-series, if it didn't have the Witcher logo on top, no one would ever hear about this. The Witcher Blood Origin is created by Declan DeBarra, and it stars actresses and actors like Sophia Brown, Lawrence Ofurain, Miran Mack, Lenny Henry, and of course Michelle Yeoh. I couldn't believe they actually managed to get Michelle Yeoh into a project like this, of an amazing actress of her stature, and she goes and does this. I still don't know why she accepted this project, but let's continue. The full runtime of the limited series is about 100 to 200 minutes, with each episode going from 45 to 50 minutes in total. And the reason why I mention this is because it is incredibly important to think about how long are your episodes going to be, how many episodes are you going to do for you to tell the story. And especially when you have a mini-series of 4 episodes, it is incredibly hard to produce and to direct a show which is going to have depth and is going to actually be good. Now, of course, it can be done, it is not impossible. But the problem is when you have an entire production team working on the show completely disregarding the books and the lore and everything what Andrzej Sapkowski was writing about. So when you have that, you start creating your own bad fan fiction. I have to say it's a bad fan fiction, because technically CD Projekt Red's games are fan fiction because they're just set in the confines of the lore, but it's good because they wrote those stories within a confines of the lore. They were not perverting the lore like it happens here with Blood Origin and the main Witcher show as well. Of course, I will be going into some of the spoilers, not too much, and I cannot show like the footage from within the show because it just came out like 3-4 days ago. My entire channel would get striked if I did that, so I'm just gonna be using the trailers and talk about some of the things. So first off, acting wise, when you have talent like I mentioned here, which is actually in this show, the problem is this talent cannot work with a bad script. And when you provide them with a bad script, it's going to be very much visible. And that's one of the first things I was able to notice in this series, is that the writing is bad. Writing is just bad. It doesn't have any depth to it. It doesn't capture any logic whatsoever. Characters are driven just because they're driven. There is no change in characters, there is no depth within characters, and those characters going off on each other is incredibly weak and incredibly shallow. I couldn't believe how shallow this series actually is, that you had all of those actors and actresses who know how to act. I tell you, like, all of those people know how to act, but the problem is you put them into a situation, you cast them in a way where it's not going to work properly, and you completely disregard the lore, by actually like going with we're going to have a diverse cast, but we're not going to actually tackle the lore and explain why people look the way they look. And they don't even look like elves. People here look like normal humans with pointy ears. It is that bad. Like, people here don't act like elves, they don't look like elves. They act like humans, they look like humans. They build cities like humans. The cities which are included in this mini-series just tells you that people either didn't read all of the books, or they read the books, they read the lore, and decided we are going to completely disregard it. Instead of creating beautiful cities that elves were inhabiting before the conjunction of spheres, the beauty which cannot be even described properly, you place people, or well, elves, I'm gonna call them people because they look like people, just like normal people. You place them in these cities which look, first off, incredibly generic, and second of all, they have nothing to do with elves whatsoever. And because you changed the story, you changed how the conjunction of spheres actually happens, you changed the origins of the Witchers. Because at the end of the show, because they needed a way to satisfy the logo of the Witcher, they had to include a Witcher. So they created a prototype Witcher. They completely disregarded the lore, the Trial of Grasses. They said they implemented the Trial of Grasses. No, you didn't implement Trial of Grasses. You saw Trial of Grasses being written in the book and you said, hey, this sounds good. Let's put it in. Let's create a prototype Witcher because we are changing the lore. Because why not? And that's what they did. At the end of the show, they create a prototype Witcher, which doesn't even resemble anything Witcher-like. He's basically a monster in its sense. Now, of course, you can play around with that, but you completely change the lore and the origins of why Witchers were created after the conjunction of spheres, after people thought we are not gonna be able to fight these monsters. We have magic now, things are not as they used to be, let's create something. But no, they disregard all of that, and they said that the elves were the first ones to create the Witchers. Boo-hoo. And another thing which I want to mention is also how they included Jaskier in the show. And they're going to tell you, of course, we included Jaskier into the show because we wanted to tie in things. Yeah, of course, you wanted to tie in things because you were not following the lore. And second of all, the reason why Jaskier is in the show is because he's a guest appearance. It is a very normal thing to do because it attracts audience and attracts views. This has nothing to do with the lore, this has nothing to do with the story. Let's just get that out of the way. And then I'm going to go from costume design. Costume design here, I swear to God, I don't know if they had one costume designer or if that costume designer was just following the orders which were given to him by the showrunner or whatever, by the production team, which happens from time to time, but still, the majority of the costumes are going to be handled by the costume designers themselves. The costumes here are basically, if I took the clothes out of my closet, I took in some random rags I put on myself and I said, I'm a fantasy character. It is that bad. The amount of outfits here which look incredibly modern, which have modern way of being made, ruin that immersion because people do not dress this way. They look incredibly generic, and at the end of the day, they're elves, and somewhat they dress like humans. That's weird. Now, one of the good things which I did like about the series is the soundtrack, because it's written by Bear McCreary, who also wrote the soundtrack for God of War, so he's amazing. Like, the soundtrack is really nice. Like, I listened to the actual soundtrack after I watched the show because the soundtrack is amazing. But the problem is, soundtrack cannot save the show. It is impossible. Even these actors and actresses who are here, obviously I wouldn't cast them in all of these roles. Like, for example, Avala and Eredin, absolutely bad casting in my opinion. Nothing against the actors, nothing whatsoever, but I wouldn't cast them in that way. And of course, as they always say, we're going to tick some boxes. We're going to, our character is this, our character is that, we're going to have this cast, it has to be this diverse. We're just going to check these boxes, and we're not actually going to do a favor to anyone and actually write compelling characters. But what we're going to do is tick those boxes because people expect us to have certain characters in shows today. People expect us to have certain people in the show today. And why? Why does it have to be the same? Why does it always have to be washed out generic fantasy show which looks like modern times when it shouldn't? Why do you do that way? They took the foundations of the lore which Sapkowski wrote, which are foundations of the Witcher world and the universe, comes from Slavic mythology, Slavic folk tales, Slavic culture in general. And then on top of that you have the Celtic culture, the Nordic culture, which kind of mixes all of that and creates the world which Sapkowski wrote. But they stripped all of that. They completely removed all of that and they created this generic crap. It's simple as that. A generic crap. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And when you remove all of those things And when I criticize your show and you call me racist or xenophobic or anything, stop hiding behind those isms. It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with the skin color of the actresses or the actors or anything, which you include that sort of casting because, hey, we want to be inclusive, not actually to write and create compelling characters on all sides. You can create compelling, good characters on all sides and all origins and all preferences. It's just how you write them. But if you don't write them well, don't accuse people of being something they're not. The show is just bad. Deal with it. So here is what's gonna be happening. They're going to look at season 3, where Henry is still in, and they're going to look at ratings and how many people saw it. They're going to say, okay, maybe we're going to do the 4th season. Then they're going to go with Liam Hemsworth, and then they're going to see if Liam Hemsworth is going to be good Geralt of Rivia or not. And to be honest, Liam Hemsworth can be the best Geralt of Rivia. He could be even better than Henry, it doesn't matter. Because the writing team and the production team is still the same, and it doesn't change anything. You can shuffle and switch actors and actresses all you want, it's not going to change anything. You can have the best talent in the world, but the stuff you give them to read out, it's bad, and it's not going to achieve anything. So stop pretending things are right and things are good. You lost your front runner. So season 4 is most likely going to happen, and they're going to see, okay, do we go with this, do we don't go with this? Because if they do season 4 and they do season 5, they're going to do season 6. But if they do season 4 and it's not right, they're not going to continue anywhere else. And sadly, because of egos and because of the production team wanting to change up the lore, to strip the lore and to invoke the wrath of fans, which is one of the things you never want to do, is invoke the wrath of fans. It is a #1 rule in any fandom. Like, it's definitely noticeable that people who produced this were not a part of this ever. It's very easy to see. And you did more harm to the entire project than anything else. This project, Blood Origin, did so much harm to the franchise. It's going to be insane in the future. And especially combining that with Henry leaving, with that story coming out where some of the writers were actively disliking the books and the games. You can see that. But remember, you wouldn't be writing The Witcher today if it wasn't, first off, for Andrzej Sapkowski, who wrote that, and second of all for CD Projekt Red for putting the Witcher universe into the hands of everyone in the world, especially in the West, because that wasn't as popular in the West as it is here, and especially in Poland, where the books are written. So that's my opinion about the show. It is absolutely bad, and this is going to be a very big hit for the entire franchise on Netflix, and I expect a lot of interesting things to happen in the future with this whole franchise. And sadly, I believe this is going to be one of the nails in the coffin. You had an amazing project ahead of you. You had an amazing world, amazing IP that cost probably millions to get. And you play around with it this way? If I was a studio head, oh boy, you wouldn't be here for long. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. If you want to stay updated with everything in the future, like The Witcher and Cyberpunk, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button. Also check us out on Twitter and Discord, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. And if you wanted to support the channel in an extra way, you can do it through Patreon or join through YouTube directly. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I will have a few videos before the end of the year, so don't worry about that. And yeah, I just wanted to get this out. Oh man, it is bad. It is bad. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.